So this evening I wanted to talk about food intolerances or food sensitivities. And the reason why I wanted to chat about this is because I'm meeting more and more people that are experiencing some kind of food intolerance or sensitivity. And of course, the first reflex would be to remove that food. If it hurts you, you want to remove it, and that's the right thing to do. The issue comes in really when you start to experience more than one food sensitivity, and perhaps you're removing more and more food. You're finding yourself being sensitive to a long list of foods, and and this is when looking after the digestive system can really help, because long term this is not a solution to just remove those foods, because there'll come a point where you may find that you're not eating enough and you are starting to experience nutrient deficiencies. So I wanted to touch on this today to give you an idea of what are food sensitivities, the difference with food allergies, and also whether testing is useful. So what is the difference between food sensitivities and food allergies? So food allergies is basically when you eat a food and your immune system overreacts. And so you may experience, for some people, it may be itching, the skin, it may be swelling, you may find it really difficult to breathe. A food allergy is very, very serious. So, you may know someone who is allergic to peanuts, for example. That's a common one. But you could be allergic to anything, really. So I know a client who's allergic to kiwis. So yes, food allergies are very, very serious. Now, with food intolerances, your body also reacts to a particular food, but the symptoms will include nausea, stomachache, bloating, IBS type symptoms. You may get diarrhea, you may get constipation. So basically it's your body finding it really difficult to digest that particular food. Okay, and there are several types of food intolerances that we are noticing, and the common ones are histamine intolerance. So that's people who react to food that contain histamine. So histamine rich food include alcohol or just fermented foods, dried fruits, avocados, aubergines, spinach, and smoked and processed meat as well. And also shellfish contain histamine. So that's one type of intolerance. And you also probably will find that depending on the quantity you eat, you may be okay, or it might just tip you over the edge. Okay, so you might find that, say, you can eat a little bit of something, a little bit of avocado, but if you were to eat too much, then your body is not able to process that food. Another type of food intolerances is lactose, of course. And for some people, they are just missing the enzyme to digest the lactose. We have various enzymes in our body to help us digest protein, fat, carbohydrates. And then when it comes to lactose, we have a specific enzyme for that. And some people are totally fine with lactose and other people may not be. In my case, I was brought up on goat's milk, and ate lots of cheese as I was growing up on a farm in France, and I was fine. I don't think I had a reaction. But as I grew older, I started realizing that when I was eating dairy, I had an itchy ear, which is quite unusual. And it's only, one day I find out that actually my ear was itchy because I was reacting to dairy. And I did a test and I did find out that I was lactose intolerant, but not to the degree where I can't eat any of it. Okay, so it really varies from one person to the next. So lactose is the second one. So the first one was histamine rich foods. Second one is lactose. Third one is, of course, gluten. So gluten, you have gluten intolerance, and then you have celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition, which should be really diagnosed by a GP. So if you feel that gluten is really not agreeing with you, definitely go and talk to your GP to potentially have celiac tests done, so you know for sure. If it's an intolerance, if it's just a sensitivity, it could be a whole list of reasons why you can't tolerate gluten, and I'm going to go through that in a second. And then, there's other things that people are intolerant to. It could be food additives. Anything packaged will have a whole list of preservatives, anything to sort of give flavors and are made artificially. And it's very common to react to these foods as well, to these ingredients. Some people may be intolerant to caffeine because, again, we are made in a certain way that people can perhaps tolerate a certain amount of caffeine and others don't. So in my case, I can have a little bit of caffeine, I'm fine with it, but if I have too much, then it won't make me sick, but it does make me react. Okay, so everyone has their own tolerance level. And things like sulfite in wine, and there's other various things that people could react to because we all have a different immune system. So now let's talk about testing. Are food intolerance tests useful? So there's no clear evidence, medical evidence that shows that these tests are accurate to start with. And it sort of depends on whether you've eaten a certain food or not. That might show up on your test or it might not. So, it's really difficult to rely on that solely, really. So I sometimes use it to give me some indication of what's going on, but this is not my first port of call. The first thing I encourage people to do is an elimination diet, because this is the most accurate option you'll find. Basically, if something doesn't agree with you, take it away from your diet and for 2-3 weeks, and then reintroduce it and see what happens. This is the most accurate test for sure. So what actually causes food intolerances? So many things. The first one being stress, which I think everyone's gone through stress lately. So very, very common, unfortunately. Stress does affect our digestion. So it is entirely possible to develop some kind of intolerance after perhaps chronic stress, long period of stress. And that would lead on to something called gut dysbiosis. And this is when your microbiome, all the little bacteria that are in our gut is basically disrupted. So that can basically cause these symptoms: bloating, cramps, IBS type symptoms. And you may find that you were eating a certain food weeks ago and now it's not agreeing with you anymore. So that's definitely worth looking into. The other thing also linked to digestion is enzymes deficiencies. So I mentioned lactose. There's other enzymes that we need to digest our food again. So that could be and that could be boosted. We can add enzymes in our diet to be able to digest these specific foods. And then IBS type symptoms will also probably make you feel quite sensitive to certain foods, especially food that are what we call the FODMAP, the high FODMAP food, which have a tendency to ferment in the gut, like the brassica family, like beans and chickpeas, that sort of thing. Garlic is another one. So if you find that you really struggle to tolerate garlic, for example, even just a tiny bit, then it might be, time to give your gut a little bit of TLC, and you can really address that. It's not for life, you don't have to remove those foods for good. Absolutely not. So now let me share sort of 4 steps to address food intolerances. What do you do when you are experiencing uncomfortable symptoms. And I know it's uncomfortable because I've been there. In fact, my journey started when I experienced food poisoning. And this is when my entire digestive system was just turned upside down, literally. And then there was so many foods that I became intolerant to. It started with wheat, and then additives, sort of processed food. I could not tolerate that. I would bloat so quickly. And so there's always a starting point. That's another thing to think about, is what is the starting point of your discomfort. So what to do? 4 steps. Number 1 is to take notes. So it's to write down the food you eat, particularly when you get symptoms, to remember what you've eaten and write down how you feel and how long you feel this symptom for. Because when you start filling up a diary, you will soon find some patterns and think, okay, I've eaten this food 3 times this week and 3 times I felt bloated. So that's a good indication there is something going on here. So that's number 1, taking notes. Number 2 is to eliminate those foods for at least 2-3 weeks. It just gives your digestive system a chance to heal, to kind of recuperate, and then you can reintroduce that food to be on the safe side, to be sure, basically. And if it's not that, then you can move on to another food if you still feel uncomfortable. So eliminate those foods that don't agree with you because they cause inflammation in the body. And then number 3 is to definitely get some support, because you can heal your digestive system with nourishing foods and with specific supplements. And depending on your case, depending how severe it is, there may be other things going on. There may be, you may have SIBO, for example, which is overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. And this is very common for IBS cases. In fact, 80% of IBS cases usually are caused by SIBO. You could do a test for that, and that's a really useful one because it gives you clear facts about what's going on. So yep, getting support and nutritional therapy is ideal for that, really. And then the next step is to reintroduce those foods bit by bit, and see how you feel. And once you've healed, once you've allowed yourself time to heal, you should be able to reintroduce most of those foods, unless, of course, you don't tolerate them, which can happen. But in my case, I am now able to eat, sourdough bread and lots of things that I never used to tolerate. Another thing was cauliflower. I really was not able to eat any of that without feeling bloated, but now I can, because I've allowed my gut to heal. So it is possible, I promise you. So if you would like to find out a little bit more, if you are experiencing food sensitivities and you're wondering what's going on in your digestive system, then feel free to get in touch. And also I have a little guide called 5 Steps to Reduce Bloating After Eating. It's a really good kind of starting point to start addressing any digestive issues. I will share the link below, so feel free to download that. And if you have any questions, feel free to post below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.